on. Pass it on, make it happen.
Who might you save?
Your mother, your father, your husband, uncle, aunt, son.
Learn FAST, F-A-S-T, the sudden signs of a stroke, and you could save.
Your friend, teacher, boss.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. F-A-S-T. That's F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. The sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in the recovery of
your neighbor, the waiter, grandmother, grandfather.
So learn FAST, the sudden signs of a stroke, then pass it on, because you never know who might save you.
Your wife, your colleague.
Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org, brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Behind Enemy Lines Radio is all about being right. No, seriously, it is. If you ever listen to Russ Gallo or me go back and forth on some issue, we always want to make sure that we remember who said what and when we said it. That's why we go to goonrecord.com. It's a brand new social media website. Challenge people on what they believe, whether it's in politics, sports, entertainment, finance, whatever. There's a category for you at goonrecord.com. Check it out right now. Tell us, what do you stand for? It's time for you to go on record. Behind Enemy Lines. Back on the air. Gene Berardelli, back behind Enemy Lines. So listen, folks. Trump administration, as we talked about in the last segment, doing some good things. Policy-wise, I think they're hitting their stride early, especially in the wake of not having as many cabinet appointments confirmed by the Senate as should be done at this point. I think the Democrats are definitely dragging their feet, and they are obstructing the first 100 days of this president in an effort to make him look bad. But let's just say the Trump administration is not exactly helping themselves by wasting political capital on nonsensical things. And this takes me to my own personal political experiences in the past week, especially on Facebook. As you know, and as you've seen since last week, there's been this whole big political fight over crowd size for the inauguration of Donald Trump when comparing it to President Obama's inauguration. Now, on the onset, let me just say this. No one should belittle the attendance of the inauguration of President Obama. It was an historic event in the truest sense of the word. So let's get beyond that point first and foremost. Nobody is trying to belittle the attendance and the significance of President Obama's inauguration. But I posted a story from our friends at Independent Journal Review, which was really in response to a lot of photos circulating on the internet, unfairly, in my opinion, comparing the Obama crowd to the Trump crowd on the National Mall. Again, not denigrating what President Obama and his inauguration and the significance of it and the attendance of it was, but let's cut down the attacks already, liberals, all right? If you look at the photos on Independent Journal Review, again, a topic that's been debated to death since last week. If you just look at those photos, they look pretty significant crowds. Not like the crowd photo that showed poor attendance for Donald Trump. That was taken a good deal of time before the event really began. If you look at those photos on Independent Journal Review, you'll see that the wide-angle photos and the high-up photos that are there, I'm not a photographer, I don't know technical terms, where they're high up and when they're over there and over here, those photos seem to show pretty similar crowds. Pretty similar is the word used. Not exact, not greater. Again, the president may want to say that he had the greatest crowd in history, and that's fine. To me, the crowds in those photos look similar, but again, this is all anecdotal to me. The crowds, now, when you look at the tweet that started this controversy from Benjamin Applebaum, and comparing one to the other, it clearly shows a crowd that is very small versus a crowd that's very big. But it doesn't give any context to it. There's a time-lapse video on PBS's YouTube page that shows the crowd coming in for the Trump inauguration, and it doesn't give you the time when they started the camera and when they ended the camera. It's these little deceptive points that get me crazy. Do I think that Donald Trump's crowd was as big as President Obama's? I don't know, and I don't care. What I care about is the intellectual honesty coming from the detractors on the other side, which, I thought maybe would take a day off. But I guess not. And not only have they not taken a day off, but people have been coming onto my Facebook nonstop since I posted this, my God, days ago, and trying to get me in the corner here to say that I'm defending Trump's analysis of this, that, and the other. I'm saying no. I'm saying look at what's there. And I'm also looking at the side-to-side comparison that you're providing to me and showing you why they are not fair to the president. I'm not saying that Trump is smart for saying this, by the way. Trump has made a lot of missteps. I believe this is one of them. I believe that the Trump administration is getting used to the job, especially the political side of it. They just got through a very tumultuous campaign where they seemingly were attacked on all sides by Republicans, by conservatives, by Democrats. And that combativeness has spilled over now into the administration of government. And for Trump to argue about this whole issue of the inauguration, nobody cares about the size of your inaugural crowd unless you keep bringing it up over and over again. That being said, if you want to say that he didn't have the biggest crowd, you can't say that either. Because again, here's the thing. Nobody keeps track of crowds for these events. They're estimates. You could say that the Metro said so many people use the Metro. You can say, based on the volume of people, there's approximately this number of people. You don't know. All you have at the end of the day are photos. And photos are basically anecdotal and circumstantial when you think about it. That's all you really have to deal with. So enough already with this nonsense of the biggest crowd. And listen, 50% of the nonsense started with Donald Trump and Sean Spicer coming out and talking about the crowd. If they want to believe that they had the biggest crowd ever, let them believe it. That's just, fine. Okay. It has nothing to do with the governing of my nation. Enough is enough, though, people. Let's clean it up a little bit. But it's very interesting to see the use of the internet to try to stem off this backlash of Donald Trump. And there was a great article I read recently talking about how Donald Trump is not only the product of political correctness, which we've talked about on the show quite a bit, but that this combative nature is really President Trump being the first president to take this idea of postmodernism and turning it on its head. And I really got to thank my friend Evan Sayet, past guest of the show, for showing me this article, talking about how nobody should be surprised that postmodern America has chosen an anti-hero to be our next president. Definitely check out the article. It's on the Federalist. And it's a really, really in-depth piece that analyzes the American psyche. His inaugural address and the way that he's conducting his first few days, to me, is a product of what we in society have been going through. I'm Italian. I love The Sopranos. It's a great show. But a show like The Sopranos is a perfect example of America rooting for the bad guy, rooting for Tony Soprano, a killer, a criminal, a thug. But the show humanizes him and takes it from his point of view, so at the point where the audience starts to morally equivocate. That is what has brought about the rise of Donald Trump. Things like that. Things like Scarface, like this article brings up. The idea of fighting back and turning the lens onto the opposite perspective. You don't like how I am, Tony Soprano would say, and how I deal with my business, or what Tony Montana would say. Remember that one famous scene? Look at yourself, society, all you rich muckety mucks out there that are basically doing the same thing, but doing it in a different way. Heroes who traditionally stand for good are now corny in today's society, right? Nobody wants to be, the corny guy at the party. We want to be Walter White. We want to, be entertained by that sort of perspective. We don't like the clean-cut good guy. We like Archer. The cartoon on FX with with ISIS before that was really ISIS. That's what's entertaining. That's part of our society now. So when Donald Trump comes along and takes these postmodern equivocations and turns it back on us, especially after an era of political correctness, it turns us inward and it makes everybody combative. The whole idea of postmodern for a Democrat is really a power grab, right? It's really to consolidate power and to make us feel bad about who we are. It's basically the power to shut others up, is what the Democrats have been practicing for a very long time. If you don't like what I'm saying, you're a bigot. If you don't like what I'm saying, you're an anti-Semite. All these things, right? Trump is now showing that he's above those criticisms. Trump has been called a bigot. He's been called a sexist. He's been called a chauvinist. He's been called all these things. And he basically turns around and says, well, you're whatever. And he actually takes the hit and gives back on his own. But by taking the hit, he is not giving up the power to the person given the hit. That's what Trump's doing here. This is a really great article. You have to check it out. It's called Donald Trump is the First President to Turn Postmodernism Against Itself, written by David Ernst. Really great piece on the Federalist. Check it out. I thought it was fantastic. But back to the Trump administration, this whole thing over the crowd and all these other things. Now the discussion about 3 to 5 million illegal votes cast in the election. As an election attorney, I don't know where that's coming from. But listen, if he wants to say that, let him say that. It's basically him saying, I think this because I think this. Does it really hurt us as a nation to say that? Just about as much as it hurt us when President Obama said Russia hacked the election. It's basically the same thing when just saying that, and then a report comes out later on equivocating that. I've gone through this with you in last week's show when you listened to John McAfee saying how the report about Russian hacking has got to be bogus because of all the points that he brought up during his interview. But honestly, folks, Donald Trump is the hyperbolic president. He is all about the bombacity, the pomp, and the pageantry. Saying things like this is going to get him in trouble. I don't think that there were that many illegal votes. Do I think that voter fraud is an issue? I think it is. I think our voter rolls need to be cleaned up. I think that we need to make sure that people who are registering to vote have proper ID when they show up to the polls. It doesn't have to be a huge undertaking to get voter ID. Do I think that people show up and don't follow the rules of voting? Absolutely. I've seen it in elections all over the People's Republic of New York City. It happens. 3 to 5 million? I would have to see what Donald Trump is looking at to understand what exactly he's saying. Because at this point, I don't know. But this is another example of wasting political capital. You gotta sit down, President Trump, with your people. And I think you need to have a long talk. I think you need to let them know that winning the presidency is different than being president. You need to be factual, and you need to stay above the fray in a lot of things. I know you love winning, Mr. President. I know you love winning. I'm going to love winning too, especially with you as president. Come on. I need you to get a hold of things. This is the first week. I understand that. But it's time to Pull back the reins a little bit on your people. I know